I mean, this story with Memphis is a big one, mainly because, again, now I'll save my shoulder. As
It's
we
only
told
Monday,
you,
Monty.
as we told you a couple of weeks ago here on the show, Memphis had reached out to the Big 12 in pursuit of a P4 invite. And it's the league that made the most sense for Memphis. There is no question about that. It's a good fit basketball wise, which really is what is hurting Memphis in the AAC. I don't think there's any question that the AAC just is not as competitive as it needs to be top to bottom for Memphis's basketball program to thrive. That certainly wouldn't be an issue in the Big 12, but it was always a matter of money. And as Ross Dellinger reported at Yahoo Sports today, Memphis made a $200+ million offer to the Big 12 to try and buy its way into that conference. And I don't even think that this is shocking. I think this is how business is going to be done. But Jake, my biggest question is, should the Big 12 have added Memphis right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's always hard to understand, when to add a singular school, right? It's always easier for a conference to add one in even numbers, but two, you'll notice that conferences like to add in groups, if you will. They don't want to do, they don't always want to have expansion and change to membership every single year. And I think that's the thing that Memphis is fighting with this Big 12 situation, is that the Big 12 is trying to figure out what the best way forward is, because we're in a time and space where everything is up for grabs. We've spent most of last week talking about how the CFP is going to be changed. Whether it's 5-11 or 4-4-2-2-1, or staying just as it is now. And maybe talk about number of conference games versus overall power opponents. So there's all this stuff happening in college football. And I just think that while I can absolutely appreciate what Memphis is doing here, trying to level up, I totally get it. I just think the timing is just not great right now because of all the uncertainty in college football. And that's what makes it difficult. So all the people out there saying, well, Memphis sucks and the Big 12 doesn't want them, and maybe Memphis should have taken the Pac-12's offer. I think the fact that Memphis is offering this type of offer where they're, trying to buy their way into a conference tells you everything they need to know, or everything you need to know about the Pac-12 offer. I mean, think about it. The Pac-12 is offering far less revenue than the Big 12 would be offering. And even with Memphis's offer to pay $200 million, not take a share, you're essentially trying to make yourself as easy of an in as possible. The Big 12 still said no, because I just think it's not smart for the conference when you think about balancing schedules, when you think about overall value, when you think about, does Memphis ever get into the college football playoff? Yes, they're a phenomenal basketball product, of course, but the league's not suffering in that area. The league is suffering in football right now, and it needs to improve in that area. So that's why I think that's what I think the challenges are. But for some people to sit here and say that Memphis is never going to get into the Big 12, I think is really short-sighted. I think it's all time and space.
Yeah, and I think from the people that we've spoken to about it in the short time we've had the story, very clearly it was a not right now answer. I think undoubtedly this was not a no, thanks, but never. That's not what this was. And some people in the media are describing it as a situation where Memphis was just blown off and we have no interest. I would caution you with that, because I don't think there's any reason to believe that at quote unquote some point Memphis and the Big 12 could be in business together. Does it ever come to fruition because of money? Maybe not. Maybe a Super League happens. Okay. But under no circumstance was it a thing where the Big 12 just blew this off. Make no mistake about it. Memphis and the Big 12 had very serious conversations. And I think there's a lot of issues at play. The instability right now amongst, the college football power conferences, the lack of clarity about where football and where college sports is going forward, a lack of clarity and finality in the House settlement. I just think right now it is a very difficult time, and these conversations that have been happening over the last 6 weeks, the tumult in college athletics is just beginning. It's not coming to an end. It's just beginning. And you look at this movement by our current president to try and unwind NIL protections for athletes. You look at, again, no closure on the House settlement, all the money that's going out, and the continuing litigation piling up. Now is not the time to go from 16 to 17. I think a year ago, different conversation. I think a year from now, different conversation. Things change very rapidly, but I don't think there's any credence in this thought system or this belief system that the Big 12 should have added Memphis, and it's a no-brainer. It is far from a no-brainer. And when I look at where Memphis sits geographically, this is the argument a lot of people are making. Oh, it's a perfect fit. It may be a perfect fit geographically, but you're looking at a situation where I just think the unknowns about the next year of college athletics are too great to risk. And if you're the Big 12, to be out front breaking ground in a new way of adding a team to a conference that's hundreds of millions of dollars in branding money, as it's been explained, that's just not the right thing to do right now. I am not surprised at all that Brett Yormark said no.
And I also think the conversation on the value of the conference, right? I mean, how strong has Brett Yormark been on the 5-11 model? If you really think about this, like, obviously that's been their chosen path, and he has been trumpeting that, like, hey, that's what we want. We're not going to be seen to be half as valuable as the Big Ten or the SEC. And I think that Memphis has a very strong basketball value. There's no question about that. I think the total package, though, when you compare Memphis to other schools that are already in the conference, you have to have that conversation if you're the Big 12. And it's not just a right now conversation. Like, yes, Memphis would be a decent fit in the Big 12. Yes. But if you're yet another school in the Big 12 that never makes it into the CFP and isn't making money that way, then that's kind of an issue with where the Big 12 is at right now, because the Big 12 has too many schools that simply are not competitive in football in terms of the playoffs, but are very competitive on the hardwood. And I'm not sure that it would be worth adding Memphis as a singular addition right now, when you're not, like, if it was flipped, if Memphis was, this school that was, the best G5 football program in the country, and clearly projected forward, like, hey, if we took Boise State and put them in the Big 12, what would that look like? If that was Memphis, then I think you're probably in.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's
I
tough.
agree. I think the business of this move does not make sense for the Big 12. And I think if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, I am a huge supporter of Memphis athletics. I think what Memphis brings to the table is hugely important to any G5 league. I don't know what the ramp up for Memphis would be from G5 to P4. They could absolutely make that jump. I have no doubt. They have great minds running their university and their athletic department. I think they have Penny Hardaway and a really good basketball program in place right now. Basketball is 20% of the pie. Football's 80%, and I believe it would be a significant ramp up for Memphis to simply compete for a 500 season. I think it'd be very difficult to expect that in the first 3 seasons in the league. And if you're the Big 12, you have already got an anvil around your neck with most of the teams in your conference. If we're just being brutally honest about where the Big 12 is football-wise, in my opinion, this is probably the 4th out of 4 conferences. The ACC, I really want to see what Florida State is. If Florida State bounces back, that's a better conference than the Big 12, especially with Jake Retzloff's departure that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. I think that is a huge blow to BYU. I look at Oak State. I look at Cincinnati. I just look at the bottom teams in this league. Arizona is spending almost no money in football right now. Like, you're looking at these programs that just are not competitive. And I look at what the ACC was able to do getting Clemson and SMU in last year on a really down year from Florida State. It's going to take that kind of movement, that kind of revival from the bottom of the Big 12 to get 2-3 teams. If this, again, I'd remind you, this year, they're not expanding the playoff. You're going to be lucky to get 2 teams in. Out one is your conference champion. What makes us believe that the Big 12 will get multiple teams into the playoff? I think that's awfully difficult to believe at this very moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
So adding Memphis, who is not a football powerhouse, for what I would assume would be a year from now, I just don't think that, I don't think that maths. Not right now, not where we are in the economics of college football. And it's not an indictment on Memphis as an athletic department. It just doesn't, the business end of this does not add up. And I think that's, in my mind, the people I've spoken to about this, that's where it comes down. It doesn't math. It doesn't add up. And it's why I told you 2 weeks ago that, hey, Memphis has talked to the Big 12. It's what I said when Pac-12 fans absolutely shat themselves when I said, hey, Oregon State reached out to the Big 12. Because why wouldn't you reach out to the Big 12? If you're Memphis, and again, Pac-12 fan, you're probably going to lose your mind here. Why would you want to join as a football team? Why would you want to join that league?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
There's nothing there for Memphis in the Pac-12. There is nothing. There is no climb. There's nothing there. You have so much unknown. And then if you turn around and you're able to partner with a FedEx or whoever it might be, and I'm trying to get the details of what that branding partnership would look like. But if you have Memphis as a corporate sponsor offering a $200+ million deal, and you get to play in a P4, and you now go from no seat at the table and no chance to get into the college football playoff to an auto bid league, who's saying no to that? Well, apparently the Big 12 said no to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I think it's easy to try and make this an indictment on Memphis. That is not what this is. I think this is far more an indictment on the status of college football than it is on Memphis.
Yeah, and I just think that this is the ultimate, like hate on the headline kind of story. That they offered a ton of money, and the Big 12 said no. And now it's like, all right, well, where do you go from here if you're Memphis? And I get I've seen all the memes and GIFs and everything about how, Memphis is seen to have been like begging to get into the conference. I just don't think that that's the case. I think that Memphis was trying to create, a different kind of value. Like, they obviously have value in basketball. They obviously would be valuable that way moving forward. And yeah, if you join a power conference as a full member, you got to get football going, which, I'm inclined to think that they would. But the hard part is that I think that what people don't want to admit is that, Dr. Scott is very aligned with the way Brett Yormark does business, in my opinion. I think they're two very creative people. I think that they're always looking for opportunity. They're always trying to benefit or create more benefit and more positivity and a better experience for the student athlete. And I think this was their way. Now, my question obviously is going to be, why now? What was the impetus for now? Like, I understand it's before football season, but we're like 2 seconds before football season here. Like, we got like
Well, I don't think you're doing it for this very season.
No, but my point is that you've had all summer. Like, if you're going to try and make a move like this, like, you've had media days, you've had a lot of different, the summer's damn near over.
Well, but I think they've been working through that process from what I've been told. This is not something that happened today. This is something that they've been working through this process and trying to find a solution. And that solution, I don't believe, exists. So I think you would love to have announced it before your deadline and given a year. And given the AAC time to maneuver there, because I don't think there's no question. I don't think Memphis is trying to damage the AAC. I don't think there's any of that. Business is business. And sometimes timelines are impacted and you have to move at a pace that is not necessarily your own. But that's the cost of doing business. And I think it's a very difficult. I don't know of a G5 program that can make the jump from a G5 to a P4 and succeed inside of 2 years. I mean, who's the best G5 football program? I mean, hands down, I would think it'd be Boise at this point. Can you see Boise in a position where they could compete for a conference champion? Put them in the Big 12 even. Put them in the ACC. They're not competing for a conference championship right out of the gate. That's not happening. And you look at SMU in what was a historically bad and thin ACC football league last year with a tragically bad Florida State. That's the only reason they're competing. But you put Boise in the Big 12. Boise, in my opinion, Boise is not beating Utah. Boise on a regular basis, especially with Ashton Ginty in the NFL, Boise's not beating any of the better defenses in this league. It's a huge climb, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not your top 22 players. I am telling you, it is the depth. It is the 3s, 4s, and 5s, the practice squad, the infrastructure, it's just so much more. The strength and conditioning, the medical staff, the rehab process that gets longer because it's a tougher grind. It's a completely different beast. It is so much more than, hey, our best 11 on offense are as good as anybody's. That might be true, but nobody's ever won a game with only 11 players on offense.
Right.
And I think people don't understand that, and people don't want to embrace the idea that it is a very difficult climb. If you are somebody like Memphis to get into the Big 12, and then that's one thing, but then to be competitive in football, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. And the question is, if you are, in my opinion, if you are Memphis, I think you're doing the exact right thing here.
I mean, is Memphis not the most attractive G5 school to add right now? I mean, you look at what's going on with the Pac-12 and, just everything happening up and down the West Coast with those two conferences. Like you zoom out a little bit and you just look nationally. Like I do think that Memphis is in a group of schools that are the most attractive right now. And I do think that you are going to have, you are going to have some conferences. The Big 12 is obviously the front runner here, but I would assume the ACC would look at expansion at some point as well, who are going to value that opportunity. It's just not right now. The hard part is that there is too much uncertainty. So you don't have the ability, if you are Brett Yormark, and again, I want to emphasize this too. It's not just Brett Yormark making this decision, by the way.
No,
it's the board of governors in the Big 12 who get together and say, hey, this is what we think of X, Y, and Z, issue. So these people got together and said it wasn't the right time. And I just think it's poor form if you're someone sitting here saying, oh, well, Memphis sucks and they're terrible and they were begging. And it's like, dude, I don't think you guys appreciate how difficult it is anymore to get into a power conference. Once the Pac-12 melted down, the entryway, the barrier of entry to get into a power conference, I would say became at least twice as difficult.
It's not begging. We tend to do this now because I think we're just a bunch of assholes. This is what we become.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're begging. They're a poverty program.
They showed up to their doorstep with a bag of money.
They brought $250 million in sponsorship dollars. That's not a poverty program. And if you are the Big 12, what is the upside to adding Memphis? Because they're not going to help you in football for several seasons. And if anything, Memphis is that team that'll beat you. Memphis is that team that'll take a Texas Tech and beat them. They can win in a one-off while they build. That doesn't help you not in this current climate. If the playoff expands to 16, okay, I could even see that happening. But I'm telling you now, we've got to get away from this knee-jerk reaction poverty program. When you say stuff like that, it tells me that you don't understand the business of college football, because that's what this is. It's a business decision. And I think it's the right business decision. With all due respect, I know when we had Dr. Scott on, we picked up a bunch of Memphis listeners. Guys, I'm telling you, it's not personal to you in Memphis. You're a great community with a great fan base that supports its university. I said the same thing about Texas State. It's not personal. It's not personal. You were a vessel for the Pac-12, and you took a huge pay cut at Texas State. I'm telling you the same thing. And as somebody that's a believer, everything happens in time and space. I'm going to tell you a wild story about buying a BMW this weekend in the non-sports stories. If that's not evidence of being in the right time and space, I don't know what is. Memphis isn't in the right time and in the right space to get into the Big 12.
Yeah, and I also think that this conversation, and again, this portion's not unique to Memphis. Like, this would be to any G5 trying to move up. The formula is not good at basketball, trying to be good in football. You need to flip that. And it's valuable, because I agree with what you said. Basketball is 20%. And that's a very important 20%. Absolutely. Because if you're getting extra shares through the tournament, that's massive. That is, anytime you can get icing on the cake, you're going to take that all day long. But this idea that you can be, I don't mean to be harsh, but irrelevant in college football, because Memphis is kind of irrelevant. Like, there's not a lot there right now. But if there ever was to be something there, a reason to watch you, a reason to talk about you, that's what I think you have to create. And that's, if I'm Memphis and I'm Dr. Scott, that's what I'm looking at. I want to get our football team in a place where we can compete with Boise State or any other top-end G5 program. That's what I would be trying to do at Memphis until the next opportunity for expansion comes around.
Yeah, and I think you look at this conference right now, and I just listen. If I said to myself, who are the best G5s? Boise certainly has to be there. I would think UNLV's got to be in that discussion. Dan Mullen says that they're going to win a national championship this year. So, I mean, how can we not have them in the discussion? This is probably,
with all due respect,
hyperbolic. But you look at the teams that play football. Tulane's a better football team than Memphis. Tulane played for the AAC championship last year, right? Like, Memphis has to win football games right now. That's the hardest part about selling yourself, because you have Penny in that basketball program that are absolutely dragging that league behind them. Like, they are pulling them like a horse and carriage right now.
Yeah.
Because there's not much in the AAC in basketball outside of Memphis. But the problem is there's not much in football at the University of Memphis, because they haven't won enough lately that we all know the answer to that. I know the answer to UNLV. I know the answer to Boise State, right? I know that they've back-to-back years they played for championships. But who's the best football team in the AAC? And if I said to you, hey, do you know the last 5 AAC champions? Well, you probably don't, right? You probably don't. And so I look at Army and I look at SMU, but what's interesting is Cincinnati won back-to-back championships, went to the Big 12. SMU paid their way into the ACC, right? Army's probably not joining the league, and Tulane is probably not joining the league. Right? But they've had movement there. Memphis has not won a conference championship since 2019. And that's a huge problem. That is a huge problem. Do you want to have a repeat of Houston, who won the AAC in 2015? Houston has not been a winning program in this conference yet. And it just goes to show you the climb. You can be a G5 champion, and that's great. And not to belabor this point or beat this drum, being a G5 champion is meaningless when you jump up to the P4, because they don't care.